The transport shuttle's engines hummed quietly as it approached the massive station floating in space. Kyle Morrison sat near the window, watching the Galactic Defense Academy grow larger with each passing second. The station was enormous, bigger than any building he had ever seen on Earth. It looked like a small city made of metal and glass, spinning slowly against the backdrop of stars and the blue-green planet below. Kyle was 24 years old, but he felt much older. He had spent 6 years in special operations back on Earth before humans made contact with aliens. Those 6 years had taught him things most people would never understand. They had taught him patience. They had taught him to watch and listen before acting. Most importantly, they had taught him that the best fight was the one your enemy never knew was happening. He wore black clothing that looked nothing like the uniforms of other cadets on the shuttle. His outfit was simple, a dark jacket that tied on the side, loose pants that allowed easy movement, and soft boots that made almost no sound when he walked. At his belt, he carried short blades, small throwing stars, and coiled rope. No guns, no energy shields, no glowing technology. The other cadets had been staring at him since he boarded. They came from dozens of different alien species. There were tall reptilian beings with scales that shimmered under the lights. There were graceful creatures that seemed to float more than walk. There were massive warriors covered in natural armor. All of them wore standard military gear, combat suits with built-in shields, energy weapons that could burn through steel, and helmets with advanced sensors. Kyle noticed their stares but said nothing. He was used to standing out. Humans were new to the galactic community. First contact had happened only 15 years ago, and most species still thought of humans as primitive. They looked at Earth's history and saw thousands of years without space travel or energy weapons. They did not understand that humans had spent those thousands of years learning other things, darker things, things that did not require advanced technology. The shuttle docked with a gentle bump. A voice came through the speakers telling everyone to gather their belongings and prepare to disembark. Kyle stood and slung a small bag over his shoulder. It contained very little, some clothes, basic supplies, and a few items he had brought from Earth, things that reminded him of home. The main corridor of the academy was massive and bright. Lights shone from panels in the ceiling, making everything almost too bright to Kyle's eyes. He preferred shadows and darkness. They were easier to work with. The corridor was filled with cadets from the shuttle and several other transports. Hundreds of beings moved through the space, talking and laughing. The sound echoed off the metal walls. Kyle followed the crowd toward the main training hall. His eyes moved constantly, taking in details. He noted the positions of doors and windows. He observed the ceiling structure and the ventilation grates. He watched how people moved and where they looked. It was automatic for him now, this constant awareness. His instructors on Earth had drilled it into him until it became as natural as breathing. The training hall was enormous. The floor was covered in a material that looked like rubber but felt different under his soft boots. One wall was entirely made of glass, showing the stars beyond. The other walls displayed screens showing various combat scenarios and academy information. Groups of cadets stood around talking, their voices creating a constant buzz of noise. Kyle found a spot near the wall and set down his bag. He stood quietly, continuing to observe. Within moments, he had identified the leaders of various groups. There was a large reptilian cadet who stood taller than the others, speaking loudly and gesturing broadly. Several others gathered around him, laughing at his words. That one would be trouble, Kyle thought. The confident ones always were. The reptilian cadet noticed Kyle. His eyes, which were golden with vertical pupils, locked onto the human. A slow smile spread across his face, showing rows of sharp teeth. He said something to his group, and they all turned to look at Kyle. Then the reptilian started walking over, his friends following behind. Kyle remained still. He had been in situations like this many times. The key was not to show fear or aggression, just calm, just awareness. The reptilian stopped a few feet away. Up close, he was even more impressive. He stood at least 7 feet tall with broad shoulders and arms thick with muscle. His scales were dark green with patterns of gold. His combat armor was top of the line, with an energy shield generator built into the chest plate. At his hip hung a plasma rifle that probably cost more than everything Kyle owned. "You are human," the reptilian said. His voice was deep and slightly hissing. "I am Zekthor of Krylia. I have heard of your species." He looked Kyle up and down, his golden eyes lingering on the simple black clothing. Is this truly what human soldiers wear? It looks like sleeping clothes. Where is your armor? Your weapons? Kyle met his gaze calmly. I have what I need. Zekthor laughed, a sound like rocks grinding together. His friends joined in. What you need? You have fabric and some metal toys. How will you stop a plasmoblast with fabric? How will you fight enemies with those little knives? He tapped his own armor. This can withstand explosions. My rifle can burn through steel from 100 meters. And you? You have what? A costume? More cadets were gathering now, drawn by the commotion. Kyle could feel their eyes on him. Some looked curious. Most looked amused. A few looked concerned, probably worried that this confrontation might turn violent. Perhaps you are in the wrong place, human, Zekthor continued. This academy trains warriors, elite soldiers. Maybe you should find a school for merchants or farmers? His friends laughed harder. Kyle said nothing. He had learned long ago that words were often wasted. Actions spoke louder. But this was not the time for action, not yet. So he simply stood there calm and still, his dark eyes watching Zekthor's every movement. His silence seemed to annoy Zekthor more than any response would have. The reptilian leaned closer. Do you even speak? Or are humans so primitive they cannot understand Galactic Common? I understand you perfectly, Kyle said quietly. Then respond. Defend yourself. Tell me why I should not report to the instructors that a civilian has wandered into the academy by mistake. Before Kyle could reply, a voice cut through the noise of the crowd. That will be enough, Cadet Zekthor. Everyone turned. A woman walked through the crowd, which parted automatically to let her pass. She was human, perhaps in her late 30s, with short dark hair and eyes that missed nothing. She wore a uniform that marked her as an instructor, with insignia that showed she held a high rank. Commander, Kyle recognized. She was a commander. Kyle knew who she was. Commander Victoria Hayes. She was one of the first humans to join the galactic military after first contact. Her file said she had been in intelligence work on Earth, though the details were classified. Looking at her now, Kyle believed it. She moved like someone who had seen real combat. Her eyes swept the training hall with the same constant awareness that Kyle practiced. Zekthor straightened up, trying to look respectful. Commander Hayes, I was simply welcoming our new cadet. I expressed concern about his equipment. His equipment is appropriate for his training, Commander Hayes said. Her voice was calm but firm. Cadet Morrison is exactly where he should be. Another instructor approached. This one was also Krillian like Zekthor, but older. His scales were darker and marked with scars. He wore an instructor's uniform similar to Commander Hayes, his golden eyes fixed on Kyle with clear skepticism. Commander Hayes, the Krillian instructor said, I am Instructor Caldrex. I will be overseeing combat training. He glanced at Kyle's outfit. I must express my concern as well. This cadet appears to lack basic protective gear. In training exercises, he could be seriously injured. Perhaps he should be issued standard equipment before we begin. Commander Hayes looked at Instructor Caldrex. A small smile appeared on her face. He does not need standard equipment. But Commander, with respect, he has no armor, no energy shields. His weapons are... Caldrex paused, searching for a polite word. Primitive. They are not primitive, Commander Hayes said. They are specialized. Specialized for what? Ancient warfare? Caldrex gestured at the other cadets. Look at them. They carry weapons that can destroy vehicles. They wear armor that can withstand explosions. And this human brings... knives and rope. Commander Hayes turned to face Caldrex fully. The smile remained on her face, but her eyes were serious. You do not understand, Instructor. That is not a soldier's uniform. That is a ninja. Silence fell over the nearby cadets. Everyone stared at Commander Hayes, then at Kyle, then back at the commander. The word she had used did not translate into Galactic Common. Their universal translators simply repeated it, ninja. It meant nothing to them. Ninja? Caldrex repeated slowly. What is this? A shadow warrior, Commander Hayes said. An expert in stealth, infiltration, and unconventional warfare. On Earth, ninjas have existed for over 1,000 years. They learned to defeat enemies who were stronger, better armed, and better armored. They learned to turn darkness itself into a weapon. Zekthor made a sound that might have been a snort. Hiding in shadows? That is cowardice, not warfare. Commander Hayes turned her gaze to him. Is it cowardice to use the... Kyle woke before dawn. though there was no real dawn on the space station. Time here was artificial, measured by the Academy's internal clocks rather than the rising of a sun. Still, his body maintained the rhythms he had learned on Earth. He dressed in his black outfit, strapped on his equipment, and made his way to the training hall. He was not the first to arrive. Several cadets were already there, checking their weapons and armor. They glanced at him when he entered but said nothing. The mockery from yesterday had been replaced by uncertainty. Commander Hayes' words about ninjas had left them confused rather than convinced. More cadets filed in over the next hour. Kyle found a quiet corner and began his stretching routine. Flexibility was crucial for his work. While the other cadets activated their armor systems and calibrated their weapons, Kyle moved through positions that looked almost like a slow dance. His breathing was deep and controlled. His movements were precise. The Etherean female from yesterday entered the hall. In the better light, Kyle could see her features more clearly. Her skin had a faint blue tint that shifted to purple in the shadows. Her hair was long and white, flowing down her back like silk. She noticed Kyle and walked over. "I am Lyra Venn," she said. Her voice was soft, almost musical. "May I ask what you are doing?" Kyle finished his current stretch before answering. "Preparing my body. Flexibility prevents injury. Control over movement is important." Lyra watched him for a moment. "You move very deliberately. Every motion has purpose. Wasted motion is wasted energy," Kyle said. "Economy of movement keeps you alive. May I watch?" she asked. Kyle nodded. Lyra sat down nearby, her violet eyes following his movements with genuine interest. Unlike Zekthor's mocking attention, her curiosity felt honest. Kyle appreciated that. Instructor Caldrex entered the hall with Commander Hayes and 2 other instructors. Caldrex's voice boomed across the space. "Cadets, form up!" Everyone quickly organized into lines. Kyle took his place, standing at ease. Zekthor stood several positions away, his massive form making everyone around him look small. "Today's exercise," Caldrex announced, "is an infiltration simulation. You will work in teams of 4. Your objective is to enter a hostile compound, retrieve intelligence data, and exit without triggering alarms. The simulation uses advanced holographic technology and real sensor systems. It will feel completely real." He began assigning teams. Kyle found himself grouped with Lyra, Zekthor, and a cadet named Dex. Dex was Vortan, a species covered in thick fur with powerful limbs built for climbing. He seemed friendly enough, nodding at Kyle when they made eye contact. Zekthor was less pleased. "Must I work with the human?" he asked Caldrex. "He will slow us down. The assignments are final," Caldrex said firmly. "Learn to work with all species, cadet. That is part of your training." The teams were led to a massive chamber. The walls, floor, and ceiling were covered in projection surfaces. When activated, they could create any environment imaginable. Kyle had read about this technology but never experienced it. "Your scenario," Commander Hayes explained, "is a night infiltration. The compound is protected by automated defenses, sensor systems, and security drones. You must avoid detection. Stealth is critical. However, if you are detected, you will be scored on how you handle the combat situation." She looked directly at Kyle when she said the word stealth. A slight smile crossed her face. "You have 5 minutes to plan," Caldrex said. "Then the simulation begins." Zekthor immediately took charge. "I will lead. Dex, you take the left flank. Lyra, use your telepathy to sense enemy positions. Human, stay in the back and try not to get killed." "We should move quietly," Kyle suggested. "Turn off anything that makes light or sound." "Use the darkness," Zekthor laughed. "This is why you will fail, human. We have superior technology. My armor sensors can see in complete darkness. My weapons are silent and deadly. We do not need to fumble around like primitives." "Your armor hums," Kyle said quietly. "Your shields glow. Your sensors emit signals that can be detected. You will be noticed." "Then we fight," Zekthor said. "That is what warriors do." Kyle said nothing more. There was no point in arguing. The simulation began. The chamber transformed. They stood at the edge of a dark forest. Through the trees, they could see a compound surrounded by walls. Light swept across the perimeter. The sound of mechanical drones hummed in the distance. The sky above was dark, lit only by stars. A cool breeze touched Kyle's face. The holographic technology was incredibly realistic. If he did not know better, he would swear they were actually on a planet's surface. Zekthor activated his armor fully. Blue light glowed from his chest plate as his shields powered up. His plasma rifle hummed to life. "Follow me," he ordered. The team moved forward. Zekthor walked openly through the forest, his glowing form visible through the trees. Dex followed, his own equipment activated. Lyra moved more quietly, but she stayed close to Zekthor. Kyle hung back, watching. Within 3 minutes, he saw the problem. A sensor tower swept its beam across the forest. The beam passed over Zekthor's glowing shield. Alarms immediately began blaring. Automated gun turrets rose from the ground. Drones swooped down from the sky. Zekthor roared and opened fire. His plasma rifle cut through 2 drones instantly. Dex charged at a turret, using his strength to rip it from its mounting. Lyra provided covering fire with her energy pistol. It was impressive combat. They were skilled fighters, no question. But the entire compound was now on alert. More drones arrived. More turrets activated. The team fought their way toward the objective, leaving destruction in their wake. Kyle did not follow them. Instead, he melted into the shadows at the forest edge. He had noticed something the others missed. There was a drainage tunnel on the north side of the compound. It was small, probably too small for Zekthor or even Dex. But Kyle could fit. He moved through the darkness like water flowing downhill. His soft boots made no sound on the forest floor. He controlled his breathing, keeping it slow and quiet. Every few steps, he paused to listen and observe. The guards were all focused on Zekthor's team. Their attention was directed at the main gate where the fighting was happening. Kyle reached the drainage tunnel. It was covered by a metal grate, but the locks were simple. He used a small tool from his belt to pop them open. The grate swung aside silently. He slipped into the tunnel and pulled the grate closed behind him. The tunnel was dark and narrow. Perfect conditions for Kyle. He moved through it quickly, his hands and feet finding purchase on the wet sides. Behind him, he could still hear the sounds of combat. Explosions, energy weapons firing, Zekthor's roars. The tunnel opened into a small courtyard inside the compound. Kyle emerged slowly, checking every direction before moving. A security camera was mounted on the nearby wall. Kyle waited for it to sweep past, then threw a small metal star. The star struck the camera's lens perfectly, cracking it and disrupting the video feed. He crossed the courtyard in seconds, staying low and in the shadows. The main building had a window on the ground floor. Kyle approached it and listened. No voices, no movement. He carefully opened the window and slipped inside. The interior was dark. Kyle's eyes adjusted quickly. He had trained for years to see in low light. He moved through the hallways like a ghost, his presence barely disturbing the air. Every corner was checked. Every sound was analyzed. He found the intelligence data in a secure room. 2 holographic guards stood outside. Kyle studied their patrol pattern. They walked back and forth, meeting in the middle, then turning away. When they turned, there was a moment when both faced away from the door. Kyle waited for that moment. When it came, he moved. 3 steps took him past both guards. They never saw him. He was inside the room before they completed their turn. The data was stored on a small device. Kyle picked it up and tucked it into his belt. Then he retraced his steps, past the guards, through the hallways, out the window, across the courtyard, back into the drainage tunnel. He emerged from the tunnel and moved through the forest. The sounds of combat had stopped. Zekthor's team had probably completed their objective, though from the sound of it they had destroyed half the compound doing so. Kyle reached the extraction point and waited. The simulation ended. The forest and compound faded away, replaced by the bare walls of the training chamber. The entire class was gathered in an observation room, watching screens that showed replays of each team's performance. Kyle's team was displayed. It showed Zekthor charging through the compound, weapons blazing. It showed Dex tearing apart turrets with his bare hands. It showed Lyra providing precise covering fire. Then the screen split. A second view appeared. It showed Kyle moving through the shadows. The camera kept losing him. One moment he was visible, the next he had vanished into darkness. The footage showed him entering the drainage tunnel, disabling the camera, slipping past guards and retrieving the data. Complete silence filled the observation room. Every cadet stared at the screen. Even Zekthor looked stunned. Instructor Caldrex checked the scoring system. His eyes widened. Cadet Morrison achieved a perfect infiltration score, 0 alarms triggered. 0 enemies engaged. Complete mission success with no detection. Commander Hayes smiled. Does everyone understand now? That is what a ninja does. They win without fighting. They complete missions that... A week passed after the infiltration exercise. The academy felt different to Kyle now. Cadets no longer laughed when they saw him in the corridors. Some nodded respectfully. A few even asked questions about his training methods. The word ninja had spread through the station, and with it came a growing curiosity about human unconventional warfare. Commander Hayes scheduled a special lecture. The main classroom was packed with cadets from multiple training groups. Kyle sat near the back, preferring to observe from the edges as always. Lyra saved a seat next to him. She had been meeting with him every evening, eager to learn what she could about stealth techniques. Zekthor was also present, sitting in the middle rows. He had been quieter since the simulation, spending more time watching and less time talking. Kyle had noticed the change. The proud warrior was reassessing his beliefs, which was never an easy process. Commander Hayes entered and the room fell silent. She moved to the front and activated a holographic display. Images of Earth appeared, showing mountains, forests, and ancient buildings. Today, she began, I want to talk about human history and why we fight the way we do. Many of you come from species that developed advanced technology early in your evolution. Your wars were fought with energy weapons and spacecraft almost from the beginning. Humans had a different path. The display changed to show human soldiers from different eras. Ancient warriors with swords. Medieval knights in armor. Modern special forces with rifles. For thousands of years, Hayes continued, humans fought without any advanced technology. We had to rely on strategy, psychology, and understanding our enemies better than they understood themselves. We learned that victory often goes not to the strongest, but to the smartest, not to those with the best weapons, but to those who use their weapons most effectively. She pulled up an image of a figure in black, similar to Kyle's outfit. This is a ninja. The word comes from Old Earth languages. It means someone who perseveres, who endures. Ninjas were specialists in espionage, sabotage, and assassination. They operated in the shadows, completing missions that conventional soldiers could not. A cadet raised a hand. It was a Therian, a species known for their straightforward approach to combat. But, Commander, is this not dishonorable? Striking from shadows? Avoiding direct combat? Hayes smiled. That depends on your definition of honor. Is it honorable to win a battle but lose the war? Is it honorable to sacrifice your soldiers needlessly when a better strategy exists? Ninjas did not avoid combat because they were afraid. They avoided it because unnecessary combat is wasteful. Every fight you can win without fighting is a victory without cost. She clicked to another image. This one showed various tools and weapons. Throwing stars, smoke bombs, climbing equipment, disguises. Ninjas understood that warfare is about more than physical strength. It is about information, deception, psychology. They learned to read their enemies, to predict behavior, to exploit weaknesses. Lyra spoke up. Commander, during the simulation, I tried to sense Cadet Morrison telepathically. I could barely detect him. How is this possible without technological shielding? Hayes looked at Kyle. Would you like to explain? Kyle stood and walked to the front. He felt dozens of eyes on him, but he remained calm. It is called mushin, empty mind. You were trying to sense my thoughts, my emotions, my intentions, but I was not thinking. I was not feeling. I was simply being. He paused, trying to find words that would translate properly. Imagine a pond. When the water is disturbed, you can see the ripples. But when the water is perfectly still, it is like a mirror. My mind was still water. No ripples. No disturbance. Nothing for you to detect. A murmur ran through the classroom. This concept was clearly foreign to many of them. This takes training, Kyle continued. Years of meditation and practice. You must learn to control not just your body, but your mind. Fear makes noise. Anger makes noise. Even desire makes noise. A ninja eliminates all of these, becoming silent in both body and spirit. Zekthor stood. For a moment, Kyle thought the Krillian might challenge him again. But Zekthor's voice was thoughtful rather than aggressive. You speak of eliminating fear. But fear is a natural response. It keeps us alert, keeps us alive. How can one function without it? You replace it with awareness, Kyle said. Fear makes you react. Awareness lets you respond. Fear causes panic. Awareness creates calm. A ninja is always afraid deep down, but the fear is acknowledged and set aside. It does not control the actions. Zekthor sat down slowly, his expression thoughtful. Kyle returned to his seat. Commander Hayes took over again. What Cadet Morrison describes is just one aspect of ninja training. They also learned disguise, forgery, chemistry, herbology, and dozens of other skills. A ninja was not just a warrior. They were a complete intelligence operative. She showed more images demonstrating various techniques: how to move silently, how to climb walls, how to blend into crowds, how to read body language and predict behavior. The most important lesson, Hayes said, is this: technology is a tool, not a solution. Your energy shields can fail, your sensors can be fooled, your weapons can run out of power. But a trained mind, a disciplined body, and a deep understanding of human nature, these never fail. These are the real weapons. After the lecture ended, many cadets approached Kyle with questions. He answered what he could, but he also suggested they focus on their own training first. Learning ninja techniques required a foundation that took time to build. Lyra waited until the crowd dispersed. "You said you would teach me. Can we begin tonight?" Kyle agreed. They met in one of the smaller training rooms after dinner. The room was empty and quiet, with padded floors and adjustable lighting. Kyle dimmed the lights until they were working in near darkness. "First lesson," Kyle said. "Move without sound. Your species naturally walks lightly, which helps, but even light steps can be heard if you do not place your feet correctly." He demonstrated, walking across the room. His feet rolled from heel to toe, distributing weight gradually. His knees were bent slightly, keeping his center of gravity low. His arms moved naturally but without excess motion. When he finished, Lyra had barely heard anything. "Now you try," he said. Lyra attempted to copy his movements. She was graceful by nature, but her steps still made soft sounds on the mat. Kyle corrected her posture, showed her how to test the ground before committing her weight, explained the importance of breathing and rhythm with movement. They practiced for an hour. By the end, Lyra had improved significantly. Her steps were quieter, her movements more controlled, but she was also frustrated. "This is harder than it looks," she said. "Everything worth doing is hard," Kyle replied. "But you are learning quickly. Most people take weeks to reach where you are now." "How long did it take you?" she asked. "Years," Kyle said honestly. "I started training when I was 12 years old. For 6 years before joining the military, I studied under a master who had spent his entire life perfecting these skills. Even now I am still learning." Lyra sat down on the mat. "Tell me about your master. What was he like?" Kyle sat across from her. He rarely spoke about his past, but something about Lyra's genuine interest made him willing to share. "His name was Chen. He was old when I met him, maybe 70 years. He had been a soldier, then a teacher. He taught me that violence should always be the last option, but when it becomes necessary, it must be swift and decisive." "He sounds wise," Lyra said. "He was. He died 2 years ago, just before first contact with your species. I think he would have been fascinated by all of this." Kyle gestured around them, indicating the station, the aliens, the galaxy beyond. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment. Then Lyra asked, "Why did you choose this path? Many humans become regular soldiers. Why become a ninja?" Kyle thought about this. "Because I was good at being invisible. Even as a child, I could move quietly, could watch without being noticed. Master Chen saw this and showed me how to turn it into something useful. He said some people are born to stand in the light and lead. Others are born to work in the shadows and protect. I am the second type." "I understand," Lyra said. "My people believe everyone has a natural role. We are taught to find ours and fulfill it completely." The door to the training room opened. Zekthor stood there, looking uncertain. It was strange to see the proud warrior appear hesitant. "I do not mean to interrupt," Zekthor said, "but I wish to speak with you, Morrison." Kyle stood. "What do you need?" Zekthor entered the room fully. In the dim light, his scales looked almost black. "I have been thinking about the simulation. About your methods. I want to understand them better." "Why?" Kyle asked directly. Zekthor was quiet for a moment. Then he spoke, his voice less booming than usual. "Because I was wrong about you. I thought your ways were weak, cowardly. But they are not. They are simply different. My people value strength and direct confrontation. We see this as the only honorable path. But watching you, I realize there is more to warfare than I was taught." This was clearly difficult for him to admit. Kyle respected the effort. "You want to learn?" "I want to understand," Zekthor said. "I do not know if I can learn your methods. My body is large and heavy. I cannot move as quietly as you, but perhaps there are principles I can apply to my own fighting style. The combat trials came once every month. They were major events at the academy, attended by instructors, officials, and sometimes even representatives from the Galactic Military Command. Cadets demonstrated their skills in front of an audience, competing in one-on-one matches that tested everything they had learned. Kyle had heard about the trials, but had not paid much attention. Combat for show was different from combat for survival. He preferred the latter. But when the announcement came that all cadets would participate in this month's trials, he had no choice but to prepare. The arena where the trials took place was massive. It could hold over 1,000 spectators in seats that ringed the fighting floor. The floor itself was changeable, able to transform into different environments through advanced holographic technology and moving platforms. One match might take place in an open field, the next in a maze of corridors. Kyle stood in the preparation area with other cadets, watching the early matches on display screens. The fighting was impressive. Energy weapons blazed. Shields crackled with absorbed impacts. Some matches lasted only seconds as one fighter overwhelmed the other. Others dragged on for minutes, both fighters evenly matched. Zekthor had won his first match quickly. His opponent, a Therian warrior, had charged forward with confidence. Zekthor waited until the last moment, then sidestepped in a move Kyle had taught him. The Therian stumbled past, off balance, and Zekthor struck him from behind with the flat of his blade. The match was over before the audience fully realized what happened. Lyra also won her match. She used her telepathy to predict her opponent's moves, staying one step ahead. When her opponent tried to flank her, she was already turning to face him. When he aimed high, her shield was positioned to block. It was like watching someone fight their own shadow. Kyle's name was called. His opponent was a Vortan named Krell, similar to Dex from his infiltration team. Vortans were strong climbers with sharp claws and thick fur. They were aggressive fighters who used their natural weapons to devastating effect. Kyle walked onto the arena floor. The crowd murmured when they saw him. Many had heard about the human who fought without armor or energy weapons, but this was their first time seeing him in person. His black outfit looked strange among all the high-tech combat gear. Krell entered from the opposite side. He was large and covered in gray fur. His claws extended from his hands, each one as long as a knife. He wore light armor that protected his chest but left his limbs free for climbing and striking. The arena configuration was announced: urban environment. The floor shifted and changed. Buildings rose up, creating a small city street with alleys, doorways, and multiple levels. This was intentionally complex, designed to test adaptability. The match began. Krell immediately climbed up the side of a building, using the height advantage to scan for Kyle. This was smart tactics. From above, he could see more of the arena and plan his approach, but Kyle was already gone. The moment the match started, he had moved into the shadows between buildings. Krell searched, his eyes scanning the streets below. He could not see Kyle anywhere. The audience leaned forward, trying to spot the human. The cameras tracking the match kept losing him. He would appear for a moment, then vanish again. Krell grew frustrated. He climbed down and moved through the streets, his claws ready. Every corner might hide his opponent. Every shadow might conceal an attack. The uncertainty was making him tense. Kyle watched from a doorway. He had positioned himself so he could see Krell but remained hidden in darkness. He noted how the Vortan moved, how he checked corners where his attention focused. Everyone had patterns. Everyone had habits. The key was recognizing them and exploiting the gaps. Krell passed an alley entrance. Kyle moved. 3 silent steps took him out of the doorway and into position behind Krell. His training blade touched the Vortan's spine. In a real fight, it would have been a killing strike. Before Krell could react, Kyle was gone again, melted back into the shadows. Krell spun around, slashing at empty air. The arena's scoring system registered the hit. First point to Kyle. The audience erupted in surprised chatter. They had barely seen what happened. One moment the fighters were separated, the next Kyle had scored and vanished. Krell was now on high alert, spinning constantly, checking every direction. But this made him predictable. He was reacting rather than acting. Kyle had seized control of the fight's rhythm. Kyle struck again, this time from above. He had climbed onto a building's roof and dropped down as Krell passed beneath. The training blade tapped Krell's shoulder. Second point. Kyle landed in a roll and disappeared through a doorway before Krell could counterattack. The match continued this way. Kyle appeared, struck, and vanished. Krell never landed a single hit. The Vorten grew desperate, charging randomly, slashing at shadows. His movements became wild and uncontrolled. Kyle simply waited for the openings and exploited them. The final point came when Krell exhausted himself. The Vorten stood in the center of the street, breathing hard, spinning slowly to watch all directions. Kyle walked out of a doorway directly in front of him, blade extended to Krell's throat. Match over. The arena was silent for a moment. Then applause began, growing louder as the audience realized what they had witnessed. It was not a conventional fight. It was a demonstration of psychological warfare. Kyle had never been in real danger. He had controlled every aspect of the match. Kyle bowed to Krell, a sign of respect. The Vorten returned the bow, though he looked stunned by his complete defeat. In the preparation area, other cadets watched the replay on screens. They saw how Kyle had moved, how he had used the environment, how he had exploited Krell's growing panic. It was a masterclass in stealth combat. Kyle advanced through the tournament bracket. Each match followed a similar pattern. His opponents could not hit what they could not see. Even when they knew his tactics, they could not counter them. Invisibility was not about technology. It was about understanding how people see and exploiting the gaps in their perception. The final match was announced. Kyle would face Zekthor. The crowd buzzed with excitement. This would be the real test. Zekthor had been undefeated in the trials for 6 months. He was the Academy's best fighter, combining natural strength with advanced weaponry, and now, thanks to Kyle's teaching, a more tactical mindset. In the preparation area, Zekthor approached Kyle. The Krillian warrior looked serious but not aggressive. "I want you to know," Zekthor said, "that I will hold nothing back. You have taught me much, but in the arena we are opponents." "I would expect nothing less," Kyle replied. "Fight with all your skill. That is the only way either of us will learn." Zekthor nodded. "May the best warrior win." They walked onto the arena floor together. The audience was larger now, many having heard about the human ninja and coming to see him face the Academy's champion. Commander Hayes sat in the instructor's box, watching intently. Instructor Kaldrek sat beside her, equally focused. The arena configuration was announced. Multi-level urban environment with variable lighting. The most complex setup possible. The floor transformed, creating a small city with buildings of different heights, narrow alleys, wide streets, and areas of light and shadow. Zekthor and Kyle stood at opposite ends of the arena. Between them lay a maze of possibilities. The match timer appeared, counting down. 3, 2, 1, begin. Zekthor did not charge forward as he might have done weeks ago. Instead, he moved to cover, using a building for protection while he activated his sensors. He was being smart, patient. Kyle had taught him not to rush. Kyle vanished immediately, blending into shadows. His first objective was to understand Zekthor's strategy. The Krillian had learned much, but old habits were hard to break. There would be patterns Kyle could exploit. Zekthor moved through the arena carefully, checking corners, using his thermal sensors to scan for heat signatures. But Kyle had learned to control his body temperature through breathing techniques, making himself harder to detect. He moved through the coldest shadows, staying near walls that absorbed heat, using the environment to mask his presence. 5 minutes passed with no contact. The audience grew restless. This was not the fast-paced combat they were used to. This was a game of patience, each fighter waiting for the other to make a mistake. Zekthor reached the center of the arena. He stopped, standing in an open area, his weapon ready. This was a challenge. "Come out and fight. Stop hiding. Face me directly." Kyle recognized the tactic. Zekthor was trying to draw him out, to force a confrontation in the open where the Krillian's superior strength and firepower would dominate. It was actually a smart approach, showing how much Zekthor had learned about exploiting psychological pressure. But Kyle did not take the bait. Instead, he climbed, silently scaling a building's exterior. He reached the roof and moved across it without sound. From this height, he could see Zekthor standing in the open, still waiting. Kyle pulled out a small object from his belt, a smoke pellet. He had several, designed to create thick clouds that would blind sensors and confuse visibility. He threw it not at Zekthor but at a distant location. The pellet exploded in a burst of white smoke. Zekthor immediately turned toward it, raising his weapon. His instincts told him to respond to the threat. While his attention was diverted, Kyle dropped from the building behind him. 3 months passed after the combat trials. Life at the academy settled into a new rhythm. Kyle's training sessions had become official classes, with Commander Hayes providing support and resources. Over 40 cadets now studied ninja techniques regularly, representing more than a dozen species. The academy's culture had shifted, valuing stealth and psychology as much as firepower and armor. Then, everything changed in a single morning. Kyle was in the middle of a meditation session with Lyra and several other students when alarms began blaring throughout the station. Red lights flashed in the corridors. A voice came through the communication system. All cadets report to main briefing hall immediately. This is not a drill. The briefing hall filled quickly with confused cadets. Instructors moved through the crowd, organizing everyone into their training groups. Commander Hayes stood at the front with Instructor Caldrex and several other senior officers. Her expression was serious. When everyone was assembled, Hayes activated a holographic display. It showed a research station floating in space near a distant planet. The station looked damaged, with several sections showing signs of weapons fire. 6 hours ago, Hayes began, the Meridian Research Station sent a distress signal. The station has been seized by pirates. They are holding approximately 30 hostages, including several diplomats who were visiting to review the research programs. The display changed, showing images of the pirates. They were a mixed group, various species all wearing mismatched armor and carrying stolen military weapons. They looked dangerous and disorganized, which made them unpredictable. The pirates have made demands, Hayes continued. They want payment and safe passage. They have threatened to execute hostages if any military ships approach the station. Our fleet cannot respond without risking civilian lives. She paused, letting this information sink in. The hall was completely silent. Everyone understood the severity of the situation. Therefore, Hayes said, Command has authorized an unconventional response. A small team will infiltrate the station covertly, locate the hostages, and extract them without alerting the pirates. This is exactly the kind of mission that requires stealth and precision rather than overwhelming force. Caldrex stepped forward. We are sending a team of our best cadets. This will be a real operation with real stakes. You will be supported by experienced operators, but you will be the primary infiltration force. He began reading names. Kyle Morrison, Lyra Venn, Zekthor, Dex. 3 others who had excelled in stealth training. Each name was called with absolute certainty. These were not random selections. These were the cadets who had proven themselves most capable. The selected cadets were moved to a separate briefing room. Commander Hayes followed them in, along with 2 other human operators Kyle did not recognize. They looked like Hayes, calm, focused, with the bearing of people who had seen real combat. Hayes introduced them. These are Agents Carson and Blake. They are from Earth's intelligence services and have experience with hostage rescue operations. They will accompany us and provide tactical support. But make no mistake, this is your mission. You have trained for this. You are ready. She pulled up detailed schematics of the research station. The pirates have secured the main areas and are holding hostages in 3 locations: the central lab, the administrative wing, and the crew quarters. They have posted guards but rely mainly on sensors and cameras to watch the corridors. Kyle studied the schematics carefully. The station had maintenance tunnels running throughout, designed for repair access. Most people would never think to use them, but ninjas thought differently. Maintenance tunnels were perfect infiltration routes. How many pirates? Zekthor asked. Approximately 20, Agent Carson replied. They are armed with stolen military weapons and are desperate. They will not hesitate to use violence if they detect us. Then they must not detect us, Kyle said quietly. Hayes nodded. Exactly. This mission succeeds only if we remain invisible. No alarms, no alerts. We extract the hostages before the pirates realize anything is wrong. They spent the next hour planning. Kyle suggested they approach the station using minimal technology. No active sensors that could be detected. No communications that could be intercepted. They would move in complete electronic silence, using only visual signals and direct line-of-sight contact. Lyra would use her telepathy to sense the locations of hostages and guards without technological scanning that might be detected. Zekthor and Dex would provide muscle if needed, but only as a last resort. The other cadets each had specific roles: communications, medical support, technical systems. The plan was complex but elegant. They would split into 3 pairs, each targeting one hostage location. They would move simultaneously, extracting all groups at once to prevent any pirates from warning the others. Kyle would lead one pair, Hayes another, and Agent Carson the third. 2 hours later, they boarded a small stealth ship. The vessel was designed for covert operations with minimal energy signatures and advanced sound dampening. It could approach the research station without being detected by normal sensors. The flight took 4 hours. Kyle spent the time in meditation preparing his mind. Fear and nervousness had no place in this work. He needed perfect calm, perfect focus. Beside him, Lyra did the same, her breathing slow and controlled. Even Zekthor sat quietly, reviewing the plan mentally. They approached the research station from the dark side, using the planet below to mask their approach. The ship drifted closer, engines cold, moving on momentum alone. When they were close enough, they used small maneuvering packs to cross the final distance. No engine burns, no heat signatures, just bodies floating through space. They reached an auxiliary airlock on the station's underside. This entrance was designed for emergency maintenance and was likely not monitored by the pirates. Kyle used a manual override to open it, avoiding any electronic systems that might trigger alerts. The team entered the airlock and cycled through carefully. Inside, the station was dimly lit. Emergency lighting provided just enough illumination to see but created deep shadows everywhere. Perfect conditions for infiltration. They moved through maintenance corridors, following the routes Kyle had memorized from the schematics. The corridors were narrow and filled with pipes and cables. Most species would find them uncomfortable, but Kyle had trained in spaces like this. He led his pair, which included Lyra and one of the support cadets, through the passages without making a sound. Lyra paused, closing her eyes. Her telepathy reached out, sensing minds nearby. 4 hostages ahead, she whispered. In the central lab. 2 guards outside the door. The guards are alert but bored. They do not expect trouble. Kyle nodded. They continued forward until they could see the lab through a ventilation grate. 2 pirates stood outside the door, exactly as Lyra had said. They held weapons casually, talking to each other in low voices. Kyle studied the situation. Direct approach was impossible without being seen. But there was a ceiling access panel near the guards. If he could reach it without being noticed, he could drop down behind them. He moved through the maintenance corridor to a point above the guards. Carefully, silently, he opened the ceiling panel just enough to slip through. The guards continued talking, unaware. Kyle positioned himself on the ceiling structure, clinging to support beams. Then he dropped. 2 seconds of controlled fall. He landed between the guards, striking both simultaneously with nerve strikes that knocked them unconscious without making sound. They crumpled to the floor before they could cry out. Lyra and the support cadet emerged from the maintenance corridor. While Kyle dragged the unconscious guards out of sight, Lyra opened the lab door. Inside, 4 scientists looked up in surprise and fear. Lyra put a finger to her lips, signaling silence. "We are here to rescue you," she whispered. "Follow us. Stay silent. Stay close." The scientists nodded, too relieved to ask questions. Kyle led them back through the maintenance corridors toward the airlock. 1 extraction complete. Meanwhile, Commander Hayes and her pair reached the administrative wing. This location was more challenging. The pirates had set up cameras in the corridors. Hayes used a small device to loop the camera feeds, showing empty corridors while her team moved through. It was a trick that only worked for a short time before someone noticed. So speed was essential. They reached the hostages and extracted them using similar tactics. Silent, efficient, professional. Zekthor and Agent Carson approached the crew quarters, where the largest group of hostages was held. This was also where the pirate leader had set up his command post. It was the most dangerous location. Zekthor had learned patience from Kyle. He waited, watching the guards' patrol patterns. When the moment was right, he moved with surprising quietness for his size. He had learned to place his feet carefully, to control his breathing, to move with purpose rather than hurry. He and Carson eliminated the guards and began extracting hostages. But then something went wrong. One of the hostages, panicked and frightened, knocked over a container. The crash echoed through the corridor. Alarms began blaring. The pirates had been alerted. The mission was compromised. Kyle heard the alarms through the station. His group was already at the airlock with their rescued hostages. He could leave now, extract his people safely. But the other teams were still inside with hostages who needed 6 months passed after the hostage rescue. The mission had changed everything. What had begun as one human cadet trying to prove himself had grown into something much larger. The Galactic Defense Academy was transforming, and Kyle stood at the center of that transformation. The Academy's leadership made a historic decision. They established a new division within the military structure, the Shadow Operations Division. It would specialize in stealth, infiltration, psychological warfare, and unconventional tactics. Everything that humans had perfected over thousands of years would now be taught to the entire galaxy. Commander Hayes was promoted and given command of the new division. Her first act was to request that Kyle stay on as a primary instructor, rather than graduating to field assignments. She made the request personally in her office overlooking the training halls. "You have a choice," she told him. "You can graduate and join operational teams. You have more than proven your abilities, or you can stay here and teach. Share what you know with hundreds, eventually thousands of soldiers from across the galaxy." Kyle stood at the window, looking down at the training floor where cadets practiced techniques he had taught them. Lyra was there, demonstrating silent movement to a group of newer students. Zekthor worked with others on tactical awareness. They had become teachers themselves, spreading the knowledge further. "My master once told me," Kyle said quietly, "that the greatest warriors are those who prevent wars rather than fight them. And the best way to prevent wars is to make your enemies understand that attacking you would be foolish. If I teach, I create hundreds of ninjas, hundreds of people who can protect others, complete impossible missions, and show the galaxy what humans bring to the community." He turned to face Hayes. "I will stay. I will teach," Hayes smiled. "I was hoping you would say that." "Welcome to the Shadow Division, Instructor Morrison." The new program attracted immediate interest. Cadets from dozens of species applied, all wanting to learn human unconventional warfare. Some came because they had seen the rescue mission reports. Others came because they had witnessed Kyle's performance in the combat trials. All came with open minds and genuine desire to learn. The training was intense. Kyle did not soften his methods or make them easier for alien species. He taught the same way he had been taught, through discipline, repetition, and pushing students beyond what they thought possible. Some cadets could not handle it and dropped out, but those who remained became something extraordinary. Lyra graduated from the main program and immediately joined the Shadow Division as an intelligence specialist. Her telepathy, combined with infiltration skills, made her invaluable. She could sense enemy positions without technology, communicate with team members silently, and detect deception during interrogations. She had become a bridge between Etherian abilities and human techniques. Zekthor also graduated with highest honors. His transformation from arrogant warrior to thoughtful operative was complete. He requested assignment to special operations units that employed combined tactics, strength and stealth, power and precision. His application of ninja philosophy to Krillian combat style created something unique. He moved like thunder wrapped in shadow, devastating when he struck but invisible until the moment of attack. Before Zekthor left for his assignment, he found Kyle in the training hall. The Krillian warrior bowed deeply, a gesture that still looked strange coming from someone so large and powerful. "When I first saw you," Zekthor said, "I thought you were weak. I thought your methods were cowardly. I was wrong about everything. You taught me that true strength is knowing when not to use your power, that true courage is patience, that true victory is achieving your objective while keeping everyone on your side alive." Kyle returned the bow. "You were an excellent student. You took what I taught and made it your own. That is the highest compliment a teacher can receive. Will you continue teaching?" Zekthor asked. "As long as students want to learn," Kyle replied. "The way of the ninja is not just for humans anymore. It belongs to anyone willing to understand it." Zekthor nodded. "Then I hope to return someday and teach as well, to pass on what you gave me." "You already are passing it on," Kyle said. "Every mission you complete using these methods, every fight you win without violence, every life you save through stealth rather than combat. You are teaching by example. That is the most powerful teaching of all." The Academy held a ceremony to officially establish the Shadow Division. It was attended by military commanders from across the galaxy, diplomats from dozens of worlds, and students who had graduated from the program. The main hall was filled to capacity. As part of the ceremony, Kyle's original outfit was placed in the Academy's museum. The simple black clothing that cadets had mocked 9 months ago was now displayed behind protective glass as a symbol of transformation and understanding. A plaque beside it read, "The uniform of Earth's shadow warriors," proof that sophistication lies not in technology alone, but in the mind of the warrior who wields it. Worn by instructor Kyle Morrison, who taught the galaxy that invisibility is an art, patience is a weapon, and the greatest victories are achieved without fighting. Commander Hayes gave a speech during the ceremony. She spoke about how first contact with humans had changed the galaxy in many ways, but perhaps the most important was challenging assumptions about what made soldiers effective. For too long, she said, we measured effectiveness by firepower, armor strength, and technological advancement. We forgot that warfare is ultimately about understanding your enemy, understanding your environment, and understanding yourself. Humans bring thousands of years of this understanding, not because we are superior, but because we had to learn these lessons to survive. Now we share them freely, making the entire galactic community stronger. After the ceremony, Kyle found himself surrounded by new cadets asking questions. They wanted to know about training, about Earth, about specific techniques. He answered patiently, seeing in their eyes the same curiosity that Lyra had shown months ago. One young cadet, a human girl who had just arrived from Earth, approached nervously. She wore a black outfit similar to Kyle's, though her movements showed she was still learning. "Instructor Morrison," she said quietly, "I am Helen Carter. I studied ninjutsu on Earth and requested assignment here specifically to learn from you." Kyle studied her. She was young, maybe 19, with the careful posture of someone trained in discipline. Her eyes showed intelligence and determination. "Who was your teacher on Earth?" he asked. "Master Chen," she said. "Before he died, he told me about you. He said you were his best student and that I should find you if I ever left Earth." Kyle felt emotion rise in his chest. Master Chen had sent him another student. Even after death, his teacher was still teaching, still connecting people, still spreading the wisdom. "Then you are welcome here," Kyle said. "Master Chen's students are family. I will teach you everything I can." Helen bowed deeply. When she straightened, Kyle saw tears in her eyes. "Thank you, instructor. I will not disappoint you or Master Chen's memory." The next morning, Kyle stood in the main training hall as a new class assembled. Over 60 cadets filled the space, representing 15 different species. Some were experienced soldiers seeking new skills. Others were raw recruits hoping to find their path. All looked at Kyle with respect and anticipation. He walked to the center of the hall. The room fell silent. Every eye was on him. "Welcome to Shadow Operations Training," he began. "You come from different worlds, different cultures, different species. You have different strengths and different weaknesses. But you all share one thing: you chose to be here. You chose to learn methods that many consider strange or difficult. You chose to challenge your assumptions about warfare." He paused, looking at each section of the assembled students. "The first lesson I will teach you is this: your greatest weapon is not what you carry in your hands. It is what you carry in your mind. Your greatest advantage is not superior technology. It is superior understanding. Your greatest strength is not overpowering your enemies. It is making your enemies defeat themselves." He gestured to his simple black outfit. "When I arrived at this academy, other cadets laughed at these clothes. They thought I was unprepared, primitive, foolish. They did not understand what these clothes represented. They represent thousands of years of human wisdom about warfare. They represent the understanding that sometimes the oldest methods are the most effective. They represent the idea that true power comes from discipline, patience, and knowledge. You will learn to move without sound," he continued, "to hide without technology, to strike without warning, to win without fighting. These skills take time to develop, years, not weeks. Some of you will struggle. Some of you will want to quit. But if you persevere, you will become something the galaxy has never seen before. Warriors who combine the best of your own species with the wisdom of human shadow arts." A cadet raised a hand. It was a young Therian, barely out of adolescence. "Instructor, what if our enemies learn these same techniques? What if our advantage disappears?" Kyle smiled. "That is actually the goal. We are not teaching you these methods to gain advantage over other species. We are teaching them to make the entire galactic community more capable. When everyone